So the question was, when, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, when do I expect to see people actually doing things like machine learning-driven content and artificial intelligence-driven content and some of the aspirational items that I mentioned during the talk, which is a great question. And I am encouraged that there is more interest in it this year than ever before. So, both publicly and then, inquiries and conversations that I have with organizations, a lot of interest in really making that happen. And I think a more, I should say, a clearer understanding of how important it is to doing that to digital business than ever before. So that's encouraging. Making it happen, it's going to be faster and easier for organizations that have been doing a lot of the good practices around content, like structuring it, modeling it, really mapping it to customer journeys and experiences. They're going to be able to make that transition much easier and much faster. Also, organizations that have some good documentation. It can be in different formats. I don't really care about the format, but if you have things like your style and things like your approach to modeling and the logic and rules that drive what customers should see, what content, the personalization and other types of logic really well documented, it's going to be a lot easier to shift that into the programming, basically, of natural language generation and to inform machine learning. So the people that have been doing the right things all along, they're going to get, I think, very far ahead very quickly. Doesn't mean it's too late, but it's going to be a lot of extra work and effort for organizations that haven't been doing that to make the leap.
This stuff takes time. It really takes time. Although we spend like 8 hours with each other every day, like it really takes time. I'm speaking out of an experience that I'm very fortunate where I've worked with the same folks like in different parts of my career. Like a lot of us worked together at Google for a number of years, and now we work at this thing, so it takes time. It's funny you mentioned the carpal tunnel thing. I had that for myself up in Seattle for about 1.5 years, and it sucks. Like it really takes you out. And it can really, like, it's all you can think about for a long time. The pain can be pretty tremendous. My manager at the time made sure that I was getting taken care of. I mean, again, I had a really good manager. Gosh, I don't really know if there's, maybe others can speak to it as well. You probably have got some experience, Rich, but.
Well, mean people suck.
Yeah.
And that's definitely, in my experience, it's a higher level decision problem. And without knowing the particulars, it's kind of hard to understand how to address it. But what I've seen for years is everybody knows the Peter principle, right? You rise to the level of your incompetence. Most people get promoted into roles because they're good at the tasks that they've done and really bad at management. Well, they don't get promoted because they're bad, but it turns out they're bad at management. There are an awful lot of programs that can be put into place to teach people things like empathy in the workplace. I would probably try and pursue that route. Working with somebody who doesn't understand that you're a human being first is pretty challenging. So I'm not sure that's helpful, but.
I had a conversation with a friend of mine at his workplace, and I forget the software that they're using, but this is kind of like, think of like peer review software where you can kind of give each other feedback. Again, this takes kind of a different person maybe to implement this kind of thing, but they had a system where it was like anonymized feedback where you could just kind of send your superiors kind of feedback on what's happening. I've never actually used that. All the feedback that I've ever received has been peer, and I know who's giving me feedback and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think speak to that too. The challenge with a lot of companies is if there are a learning organization who cares, they will welcome that kind of platform. Many companies are afraid of it because it's going to expose the problems that they have. So it sort of depends where you are.
No, so I know that Cox does value, the working relationship and everything else. So they do have things in place to do 360 reviews for you to give feedback to your managers. There's lots of programs to thank everyone, and it's just anytime there's a difficult situation, it's just simply just trying to understand what is the difficulty, what is the root cause. Sometimes it's not you, it's just a reaction to something else that you can't control, but if you're aware of it and can empathize, then maybe it's a better spot.
So, asking everything from, who's going to be focused on or contributing the content to this project or to this site or whatever the case might be, to, this is great. What is the strategy from a content perspective here? How can we bring that perspective in? And, you might find that there are answers for some of those questions and there are not answers for some of those questions, and where there are gaps, that's a great opportunity for you to make suggestions, whether it's suggestions for the content itself or suggestions on, is there someone who is part of the team or that we could bring in who could have this focus, because it really is going to be important to our design being successful. So I think that's the most powerful technique that you could use.
As much as you think like content's not your job, it actually does become part of your job, because we have the luxury of having a content strategist on our team. So we pull her in as soon as we can, because a lot of times the content that she's writing can drive the design, help drive the design. But even if you don't have it, you're going to have to put in content in there. And a lot of times I will fill it with suggestions of the customer is probably thinking about this or wondering about this in this stage. That's great guidelines for the content writer or the content strategist when they are pulled into the project later.
Yeah, and if you really think of it, from a user perspective, nobody goes to a site or an app to interact. They go to find something or to post something, to share something or to do something or, buy a ticket or something. They go for the content. So, that's why we wanted to present all these different views, because they all intertwine for the user.
One of the bits of feedback that was really useful to me when I was first getting into this industry was, it was a feedback from an interviewer, and they said, what was really useful about interviewing with you was that it was very clear you could do the things that you're supposed to, like all the stuff you mentioned, but you were really passionate. It was clear to me where your passions were and all those things. Oftentimes when you're interviewing, you kind of want to just say, I can do all the things. But really, a lot of people, that's where everybody kind of does the same thing. And so what you want to do, I feel, is actually show, I can do these things, but this is where I really care about. Like, I really care about UI design, or I really care about research. And then it just, because then in the end, oftentimes, I guess bigger companies, this is true, is that they may have brought you in for a design position, but you come out super strong on research. It's like, okay, actually, research, we have a spot for you. So I think the biggest thing is just show the things that you can do, but really hone the things that you're passionate about. Because in the end, you can't do it all. You can't. And the other bit on that is that the bigger companies in general, the more specialists you'll find. And the smaller companies in general, the more generalists you'll find. So just keep that in mind as you're applying to places where you go into a large company, like a large enterprise company. You're going to have to kind of do that passion bit even more.
A lot of companies know exactly what they need, but a lot of companies have really no clue about what they need, and so they put out job recs and they think, I want an IX person because somebody told me that's what we need, et cetera. I think it's important to consider when you talk to people, understand not what they're looking for skill set-wise, but what they're trying to solve. And then you can understand how to apply your skill set to solving whatever that is. And I think that speaks to your passions and where they might come out. Oftentimes, I think the light bulbs will go off, and then they'll see, oh, this person plugs in this way, as opposed to, I have a job rec, they have 8 years experience, but that person had 10 years experience. How do I make that decision?
Well, let's thank our lightning talk.